about inflation and interest rates. We had the Reserve Bank of India Governor Shaktikanta Das at the Business Today Banking Summit recently, and he spoke about how he thought that interest rates would be high for long. That this idea that interest rates have peaked, he doesn't seem to agree with. His sense is that interest rates would keep rising in the foreseeable future. Do you share that assessment?
To bring inflation down durably, I mean, we expect that interest rates will have to stay high for a while. The markets think that it's going to come down very quickly. I think we think it's going to take a little longer. Then the question is,
how much longer? Do you have a sense of how long it
So,
could
for
be?
instance, in the US, we think that interest rates will have to stay around 5% through 2023. Now, of course, you have to look at incoming data and you'll have to see what inflation looks like. But as of now, that's where we think it is. And the markets expect that there's going to be a rate cut in 23. So that's inconsistent with Fed communication and what we think. The question then is, what about 3 years later, right? Do we think we're going to be in this high interest rate world? And there I'm less sure. I think there's lots of uncertainty. There are forces that go in both directions. It's hard for me to point to like strong evidence that says clear signs that we're going to be in a high interest rate environment for the next 5 years. That I think is a little more difficult to make.
What's your outlook on inflation? A lot of commentary seems to suggest that the belief or the consensus is that American inflation could potentially have peaked, which would have a bearing on the rest of the world as well. Do you share that, or do you see prices continuing to increase?
So more generally for the globe, we have global inflation expected to have peaked in 22 and then coming down, because we've seen energy prices come down and food prices come down, and that's helping. But the non-energy and food prices of pieces of inflation are still quite high in many countries of the world. In the US, we are seeing inflation come down, even in what we call the core inflation aspects of it. So monetary policy is working. We are seeing the effects. We're seeing inflation come down. But it's going to take 2023, and for some countries, it's going to take into 2024.
Speaking of inflation, we're seeing runaway inflation in Pakistan. The RBI governor spoke of how there's a sense that in South Asia, like what we saw with Sri Lanka, it could potentially we could see a similar situation play out in Pakistan as well. How concerned are you about what's happening in Pakistan?
Well, we do have several of our member countries that are in a difficult position. Sri Lanka is one of them. Pakistan, of course, including what we had with floods in Pakistan. So we work very closely with our member countries.
Are you concerned that Pakistan could default? It seems to have only $13 billion of reserves all told just left, and the economic situation seems to be very precarious.
These are difficult times. We're working very closely with all our members, including Pakistan. We'll see how things play out.
But what are your prescriptions for what the country should be doing to try and recover from the precipice?
We work, as you know, we have a program with Pakistan, and there are many aspects of it. There's a fiscal position that has to be improved. They've had a loss of foreign exchange reserves. The flood has been a huge problem, of course. So we're working closely with it.